Oh, you know what, I'm throwing stuff around, Steve, thank you.
It is too strong. So
Yeah,
I
strawberry
said,
fuzz
oh,
for tea too.
I said, can I have one? They're like, do you want to take one home? No, I
That's
just give
strawberry
it to you.
fuzz because what people do is
But it is too strong. I agree. It's too sweet.
Okay, so we will adjourn the closed session and reconvene open.
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So there was no action taken in the closed session. Now is the time for a public comment period. Persons may speak on any item that is not listed on the agenda. Speakers are requested to fill out a speaker card and state their name and address before addressing the board. Individual speakers are asked to limit their comments on items no more than 3 minutes in order to allow anyone who wishes to speak the opportunity to do so. Groups are asked to limit their comments to a total of 10 minutes. The board shall limit the total time of public comment to 15 minutes at the beginning of the meeting. If additional time is needed, public comment will continue after the discussion items. Is there any public comments on items not on the agenda? Seeing none, now is the time for our employees of the month. So first of all, we have Tran. Tran is a custodian for the district office. He takes care of both floors of the building and does the daily mail delivery and pickup at all the school sites. He accomplishes all of this as a part-time employee. She also fills in as a substitute custodian at the school sites whenever needed and is always willing to do whatever it takes to get the job done. He demonstrates an outstanding work ethic on a daily basis. He takes impeccable care of the district office and also takes the initiative to ask if anyone needs anything. He is conscientious and a pleasure to work with. He always has a smile and a friendly greeting for everyone in the office. He is very well deserved Employee of the Month.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And then also, I understand she's not able to be here tonight, but Danny Jurichko. We are pleased to honor Danny Jurichko once again for her outstanding efforts as Inclusion Program Specialist at OIS. Danny possesses extensive knowledge of disabilities from mild or moderate to severe, as well as experience supporting students with a wide range of educational and support needs. Over the years, Danny has constructed a strong program founded on the idea that all students can learn when provided a safe, caring, and inclusive environment. Her dedication as an educator is evident when one sees the caring instruction she provides her students and how her students respond to her. OUSD is indeed fortunate to have Danny as an important and vital part of its staff. So, thank you. Next on the agenda is our consent calendar. Items listed under the consent calendar are considered to be routine and are acted upon by the Board of Trustees in one motion. There is no discussion of these items before the board vote unless a member of the board, staff, or public requests specific items to be discussed and removed from the consent calendar. It is understood that the administration recommends approval on all consent items. Each item on the consent calendar approved by the board shall be deemed to have been considered in full and adopted as recommended. Questions on the consent calendar or otherwise a motion to approve it?
I move we approve the consent calendar.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. So our first action item, agreement and election to refund other post-employment benefits through CalPERS. Lorraine.
The CalPERS sponsored California Employers Retirement Benefit Trust Fund, or CERP, was created for the purpose of receiving employer contributions that will pre-fund health and other post-employment benefit costs. There are 36 school districts throughout the state participating in this OPEB program, and 20 public agencies within Contra Costa County will also participate in this CERP program. Pre-funding post-employment benefits would enable the district to make actuarially determined contributions to partially or completely fund their future obligations. Earning on assets reduce the amount needed to fund the district's employer contributions. Investment returns would be higher than the rate earned locally at the county treasurer, making the district's annual required contribution and unfunded liability lower. Pre-funding can also contribute to a higher district credit rating when seeking to purchase general obligation bonds or GO bonds, and can enhance the financial security for all retirees. Contributions to the CERP fund will be accepted as early as 1 day after the date of the agreement is approved by CalPERS, and CalPERS does not require that contributions be made on a regular basis. They're only submitted on a voluntary basis. In order to establish a revocable trust with CalPERS, both the agreement and delegation of authority need to be approved by the Board of Trustees. The trust can be established without a transfer of funds. CalPERS recommends the district would work with their actuarial firm to determine the amount and investment strategy that would be most effective in reducing OUSD's unfunded liability. The district cost for participating in the CalPERS OPEB program is 13/100ths of 1%, or 0.0013 of the total assets that are under the control of the CalPERS program. So, for example, if it was $1 million in the account, it would be $1,300 per year. The expected long-term rate of return varies from 6.12% to 7.28%, depending on the strategy selected. According to the most recent actuarial study, the district's unfunded liability is $11.6 million, and our pay-as-you-go amount for 2014 is projected to be $457,000.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So questions from the board on this? And I understand if needed, we could contact the CalPERS representative.
Yes, they are on standby to answer any questions via the phone.
So I have a question. It sounds like you explained the administrative cost of this and that we don't have to put money into it just to open this account. But my question is, so if we set up this account and then we want, well, I guess I'm still a little bit confused how you currently do the payments for this. I assume it comes out of the general fund once a year for the unfunded liability that we're talking about using this irrevocable trust for. You would puzzle maybe the
Yeah, I'm not sure if I understood the question,
okay. Well, whatever we do now,
but
if we set this up, how much money, where I'm going to is how much money are you recommending we put in a certain amount of money, and if not, at what point are you going to come back to us saying, okay, I recommend putting some money in, here's how much? I mean, what would the next step be if we go ahead and approve this trust fund?
so CalPERS recommends that we work with our actuarial firm to determine the best way to pay down our unfunded liability. However, we could consider, the estimated cost for this year's OPEB, well, our pay-as-you-go, according to the most recent actuarial, is $457,000 and some change. So basically, we pay that money out on a monthly basis to CalPERS for our retirees. We could opt to put this year's total projected amount into an irrevocable trust. If we were to do that, how that would work, if we were just doing it to set aside this year's liability, each month when we pay CalPERS, we would submit a report or a deposit, like reimbursement, to the trust, and they would give us the money back. So we can, it's almost like a checking account. We could use it as just to meet our current year liability on the pay-as-you-go amount and not exceed that if that was a decision that the board would want to consider. So that's also an option, because we know what our pay-as-you-go is, and currently we're getting 0.002% interest, or what, less than 0.25%, because that money is in the county treasury. So if that were something that was the choice of the board, what we could do is put that amount that we know we're gonna pay out anyway in retiree benefits, and then just draw it down as we need it, and then we would be able to recoup the interest at that height.
That wouldn't be actually saving money to reduce our unfunded liability, it would just be using it as a better investment vehicle.
Yes,
And
Which
what
money do you have in
interest,
Fund 17?
1.3 million, I believe.
and what interest would we get then?
It would depend on the return, investment return.
Right,
Well,
it
we put
depends.
in 457,000.
It
That
depends.
depends, but approximately, do you have a,
The rate of return that they were quoting is 6.12% to 7.28% is the interest that was quoted on the long-term rate of return, which would be over time. So it's an average.
okay. then if the charge, the administrative costs, if you put in 457,000, for example, about how much does it cost you to have the account?
$650.
Okay.
Is there a cost associated with setting up the trust fund and not funding it immediately? I mean, if today we just set up the trust fund and didn't figure out the dollar amount that we're putting in it, is there a cost or a fee associated with that? It's only,
On the balance that's in the account.
okay. Have our attorneys looked at this agreement?
We have not had the attorneys review the agreement.
But you would, I assume. Would you have them review this? So that means no.
One thing that when I was reading through this, I'm glad you told us less than 0.0013%, but I don't see it listed in the agreement as being that. I just see references to cost of administration. So I'm wondering where in this agreement is that limit set so that we have an assurance that that rate's not going to be, now it's forget the 0.00, it'll just be 13% from now on. I mean, where's that language that would tell us exactly what the amount is going to be?
The rate is subject to change. I do know that, and it's based on the overall cost of running the program, and the cost has actually, the rate percentage has decreased over the last recent years as the trust has grown in size. So that percentage has actually decreased over the term of the life of the program.
Do you know what it was at its highest?
I do not, but I can phone friends. The board would like.
Well, maybe another question, whether it's a phone question or not. In the audit section under the general provisions on page 79 of the packet, it said something basically saying during and for 3 years after the term of this agreement. I didn't really see a term established in this agreement. So what does that mean to the district? What is the term that we're envisioning? Is it just indefinite until we break it, and then 3 years thereafter this kicks in? Or was there a minimum 10 years, 1 year? I mean, I didn't really see any.
There was no minimum term requirement that I'm aware of, but like I said, we could get them on the phone.
Another question on the termination language says they can terminate us, but it doesn't say anything about what if we just wanted to switch administrators of our trust fund and transfer the money into another.
Isn't that section 7 on page 79 in the packet? If for any reason the board terminates the pre-funding plan?
The board is CalPERS.
Oh.
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, well, under H on the bottom of 77, it says the board, meaning CalPERS, will terminate employers' participation in the pre-funding plan F, and it gives a couple of reasons. But I don't see anything about how, and then it does say then we could do this trustee to trustee transfer, which seems like something similar to maybe like if you're rolling over an IRA or something, you change employers or something, but, which I would like to know if that's, if it is sort of as simple as that, but it still is under, if after the employer's participation in the pre-funding plan terminates, then we could do that. Well, what if we just want to do that without them terminating us? Do we have that right?
I know that the money, once it is set aside in the fund and you terminate, it can only be still used for welfare purposes.
Right, but what if we
So,
what if we found, what if all of a sudden they raise their fee to something and we could do better at with another administrator, still with our trust fund, sort of like your
Could you
retirement
transfer
benefit,
it?
your IRA or something like that, right? Trying to envision it in something that I can relate to a little bit more. Could we just transfer those funds, do some fund-to-fund transfer to something else without them terminating us. This is a fun your friend.
This is a like, do you want me to give them a call?
Maybe, yeah.
Sounds like we got 3 questions for him.
This is the $1 million question.
Some child.
We need the music, yeah.
You can ask the audience.
He's not answering. He's communicating, told me. I'm like, I'm not hearing you talk to this.
It's just going into voice.
Did they say they would be around?
They did.
Why don't we,
I've got one question for us that comes to mind maybe before we. So there's some reports that have to be submitted to them. How much work is that? Or do we already do that? Or have that information? Is that monthly? Is it every time you deposit? Or how does that look for you?
In the beginning, we have to submit our actuarial, which we are having the last Board of Trustees meeting, the board authorized a new actuarial study to be completed. So that is part of the paperwork that needs to be submitted in order to open the account. There is a, the withdrawal forms are something that we would have to work with, but it doesn't seem like a very cumbersome process. If we were to do the monthly reimbursement, it would be a monthly drawdown back, and basically what we would have to do is show proof of payment and the amount paid on behalf of our retirees, and then we would be reimbursed. So it's not.
So is that, because I noted they called out, you know, an OPEB cost report based on the actuarial assumptions. So that being said, just trying to understand what level of effort that means for you,
A lot of it, the actuarial firm works with CalPERS on. So it's between the actuarial firm that we've contracted with and CalPERS.
Okay, so we've in essence paid for that service.
And they have worked with the firm we've contracted with. I spoke to them about that in advance, and they have worked with the actuarial that we have a contract with.
Thank you.
okay, so I guess I would recommend moving this item down a few spots, and we can maybe try them again a little bit later. So why don't we move this down, okay, we'll just do item B then.
Is this done? Hi, John, this is Lorraine.
Hold the phone.
Byron School District. Are you available to meet and answer some questions? All right, thank you. You guys ready?
Busy.
Okay. Okay, we're not sure if you can hear John. So we have a couple.
I can hear you okay.
Okay.
We just do the question.
I think he's gonna hear you with
The
us.
So
question
Julie,
number
do you
one.
want to ask yours first, and then we'll.
Termination.
Yeah.
She can repeat it.
Yeah, so my first question relates to the termination if we wanted to switch to a different administrator of our fund, of our trust account, could we do so?
So if the district at some point would like to reinvest the irrevocable trust funds with another agency, is there a termination clause that would prohibit that?
There's no termination clause in our current contract. So for all agencies who join our program now, they can terminate at any time with no penalties or fees whatsoever. We would just then need to move the assets from our trust to another GASB compliant OPEB trust dedicated to the same purpose.
Okay.
Can you point us to where that is in the agreement? Because when we're reading the agreement, it looks like there's a termination provision that relates to you terminating us, but not the other way around.
The question was, where in the contract does it stipulate the district's right to do that? They saw the reverse, where CalPERS can terminate the agreement, but they're looking at the agreement and wanting to verify that option within the contract.
Yeah, I'd be more than happy to email you and point you to the exact area of the contract. I don't have a contract in front of me right now.
Okay, and then one of the other questions was on the cost associated with the administrative costs and language associated with the potential increase in the administrative fees and what the general history of those fees have been.
Sure. It is true that costs can go up or down at any time. We are a not-for-profit agency, so we only charge our contracted employers those exact fees that we need to charge them to basically pay the bills that are required to run the program. And we track our costs very, very closely, literally on a day-to-day and a week-to-week basis. The fees that we have to worry about come in two forms. One is direct costs to the program. That would be our actual budget. So staff salaries, travel, equipment, etc. We know that prior to any given fiscal year because we budgeted for it appropriately. And then the other costs that are involved in the program are the indirect costs. And those are the costs that are allocated back to the program from like our investment office, our fiscal accounting, all those kind of places. And what we then do is we also project what the fee rates that we're actually using at the time to collect fees. And so when we're collecting fees and projecting that over the course of the year, as well as projecting what the total cost of the expenses would be, if we determine that we're collecting fees at a rate that's too high in order to pay the bills, then we will lower the costs. If we're collecting fees at a rate that's not going to pay the bills, then we may have to increase the cost. The history of the cost has been, the first year we started out at 2 basis points, which was unrealistic, but that was a startup cost based on projections that we would meet certain thresholds, and we far exceeded those projections. So the cost has gone 2, 6, 9, 12, 15, and now back to 13. We would expect over the next year, year and a half, that we would move down towards the 10-point range. And somewhere between that 10 and 13 is probably our maturity level where we would anticipate costs on an ongoing basis.
Thank you. There might have been one other question.
Yeah, the other was just the term. Is there a term on this at all?
The contract refers to renewal of term. We didn't see any indication of the term of the agreement within that.
Yeah, there's no length of term. You can contract 1 year or 3 months or on and on. We don't stipulate how long the terms of the agreement last. It is a bilateral agreement, so it cannot be changed without the agreement of both you and us at the same time, obviously.
So that one term reference was really just, once it's terminated in some way, shape, and form, from an audit standpoint, that was the only reason it was mentioned, I guess.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Just verifying that the termination language in there was referring to,
Just maintaining
an
records.
audit.
Okay,
So I think they're good on that one.
okay.
Any other questions?
No. Ends up getting the termination, language or reference that he knows.
Is it possible to, find the termination language within the contract? These are in the middle of a board meeting. Which page it's on?
Yeah, can you hold on a second?
Sure.
I just need to look through my phone and get the contract up, so hold on just a second.
All right, thank you. You guys okay with that?
Oh, yeah, we have a copy of it here, so tell us where it is. I think 20 years ago, I looked through my phone. Yeah. People think you're crazy. I saw 77.
Section H5 details the termination.
Thank you. They're looking.
It's gonna be independent.
I guess my concern is because all the language preceding it relates to your ability to terminate us, and it's not necessarily clear.
Yeah, let me get the actual language so I can cite it. Hold on just a second.
Okay.
You guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay.
It's going over the wall.
So on H5, it says, after the employer's participation in the plan terminates, the governing body of the employer may request a trustee-to-trustee transfer. And the only stipulation it says is that we have 150 days from the date of the request to actually effect the transfer. So there's no, it's talking about you, the governing body, being able to terminate and ask for a trust-to-trust transfer. Below that, in section B, it talks about disbursement of the assets. So there's no stipulations for you as a governing body that restricts you on a time basis. In our very original contract, we clearly spelled out the fact that you had to wait 36 months. But that's no longer the case.
Thank you.
Other questions for John? Okay, I think we're good with John.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
for
John.
Okay, no problem.
All right, thank you. All right, bye.
Okay, I'm going to take comment from the public. Is there any comment from the public on this item? Further discussion from the board?
I've already spoken in public that I'm in favor of setting up the irrevocable trust. And so I think the next part of the discussion for me revolves around money, how much to set aside. Go ahead.
I would like to make this two-part. discussion? We could make a decision on creating it, first of all, and take some action with that, and then potentially take action with the funding. I think that, Julie, one thought I had is on the termination thing. I think we can get more clarity on that as time goes on. I do see what he's saying, though, that the governing body may request it. I think in the early stages, when there's not a lot of money in there, we certainly spend the money that's in there, and that effectively terminates
Yeah.
our obligation with them.
Well, and the language is a little ambiguous, so help us stay where the, I mean, yeah.
So what I'm wondering is, does this, I'm wondering, when money is going to be put in this account, does every time that decision gets made, does it come back to the board? Right, because this isn't
Yeah,
about.
we're not, well, I suppose we could make a board action to fund a per annum sort of thing, but I don't think that's what we've been discussing so far. I mean, I think in theory you could. I think in theory you could say we're gonna fund X number of dollars a year, but I don't think that's what we're discussing. I think we're discussing funding it right now, and then in the future, the board will have to decide again when to fund it and how much to fund.
Right, well, that's, I mean, you know, I've had a lot of reservations about this, but I do understand that it's gonna get better interest rate, and we have to pay this anyway, so if we're just talking about, like, the way Lorene described it, paying for that year, and then we're gonna pay that anyway, or something like that, that makes sense, but I wouldn't want to set something up where it's automatically gonna have more money going into it without coming back to the board.
So, yeah, I think that's a separate discussion that I don't think we.
But that's
Really
not,
can't.
yeah, okay.
As far as accounting goes, does this become a different fund number for us? And then that's its own report out, so when we do budgets as a board, we're going to talk about what we're doing with our funds at that point in time, so it become part of the budget discussion. Is that how you see that, or?
It would be a separate fund, and it's probably going to be reported out as cashless fiscal agent, because it's not being held within the county treasury. So it will be reported out in our audits and in our state reporting, but it's not going to be, it's not likely that it'll be reported out as part of the general fund. It'll be a separate fund, cashless fiscal agent.
And reflected as such in the budget.
Okay. Is there a motion to take action on this item to create a trust with California Employers Retirement Benefit Trust?
I move we enter into an agreement, an election to pre-fund other post-retirement benefits through CalPERS.
A second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so that was unanimous. And then I think we, like I said, I think we separate that decision from the decision of how much money to put in. So Matt, you wanted to say something about?
Yeah, so I've put a fair amount of thought into it. I originally was thinking that we would deposit 10% of our unfunded liability. I thought that was kind of a great number. But I've been looking at what other people have done, doing a little bit of research. I can see that where that might be a little bit aggressive. So my next thought was potentially taking 2 times our pay-as-you-go amount. So in theory, with $457,000 in the account accumulating interest, and then another $457,000 in the account that would be whittled down over the course of the year. Do we pay monthly?
We pay monthly.
Yeah, that would be whittled away monthly, so that that original $457,000 would be their accumulating interest. The second, $457,000, less, 1/12 of it every month would be accumulating interest, and we'd start to see the benefits of some interest accrual and offsetting as well. It does obviously help our credit rating. I think the more money we have sitting in there against this almost $12 million unfunded liability improves the credit rating of the district, gives us a better ability if and when we do decide to go out for bonds. So earnings on the assets reduce the district's employer contributions, so I'm thinking 2 times pay-as-you-go would be appropriate in that.
Any thoughts?
Well, I was more thinking something a lot lower, because I was thinking something more in line with how Akalani's was doing it, which I think they're trying for, they're depositing money on a less regular basis, but I thought they were trying to do like a 1% of salaries. I think it's the last I heard, that they were trying to decide it would only be like 160,000. I don't see it as a checking account. I thought the idea of this was to put money aside that would start accruing and keep putting money into it and not be taking money out of it for our pay-as-you-go. But I can see why you would do that on top of whatever dollar amount we agree on, because if you are going to earn a better interest rate than basically zero, then it might be worth looking at that as, maybe put your pay-as-you-go for the year plus X amount. My X amount, I guess, is a little different than yours is, partly because I'd rather see us, begin to fund it and then look at it as part of our budget process. And, since you can put money in at any time, sort of maybe revisit it every 3 months or something on sort of a regular basis to, figure out how much we can really afford to put in there.
Well, my ultimate goal would be to achieve getting in that account, the total amount of the unfunded liability. Is that your goal?
Well, I think the goal is to get that annual ARC amount in there every year, which would ultimately lead you,
right.
And also to lower our unfunded liability
right.
in various ways that I would like to see. But yes, but I guess I'm just, would like to start smaller than.
Why? What's the upside of starting smaller? We've got 1.3 million in Fund 17.
I know, but I would like to have it be part of our budget process, because we have other concerns as well, not only saving for this. This is clearly a liability that we have, and I'm concerned about it, and that's why we're doing this, right? But
$12 million liability. It's not like a $300,000
absolutely,
liability.
and it's going to take time, clearly, no matter what, to try to address that. And we're taking a step, but I don't know. I would just rather see it, because I do think we have other, district needs as well that we need to be looking at, and we should look at it all together.
Yeah, I agree with Julie, because this would be earmarking this money only to be used for this purpose. I was, just in terms of a lower amount, I was thinking if we are paying a certain amount, if it's $457,000 each year, and that's, that you could potentially put that amount or up to that amount in, but I wouldn't be comfortable with putting any more than that in right now, especially when we haven't finished negotiations. I know it doesn't really have any direct impact on that, but it just is a very awkward time to be putting any more money than that aside, because there's.
If you're only putting in the amount that you're then going to be drawing out of it, then you're not really saving anything for the liability portion. You're just continuing to pay as you go, but putting it into a different account.
Yeah, but
You know what I mean?
these are steps. Setting up the account is a step in itself. It's taken us a while, several meetings to even get here. Yes, it makes more interest rates, setting up the account, putting the money in that account for a 1-year situation. We could, like, as you said, we could come back 3 months later and decide to put more money in it. But to do it now just seems like the wrong timing to me.
But Sarah, I understand what you said about negotiations, but we also have to be mindful, this is a benefit for our employees.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
a benefit, but it's
A lifetime benefit.
Yeah, it's a lifetime benefit. It's not gonna change overnight. It's not gonna change in the next 3 months, you know, based on the, you know, what we're talking about, the amount, the difference in amount of 400,000 or 300,000 or even up to $1 million. That's not gonna have that huge an impact in the next few months. You know, there's no reason why we have to put more money in now versus 3 months from now, or even 6 months or 9 months from now. You know, and the thing about the credit rating, it's not gonna have a huge impact on our credit rating right now. We're not, you know, I mean, that's great for the long term, but that isn't a big factor right now. I think that just getting it set up and taking, you know, some sort of baby step is you know, is a big step.
Informing question, Fund 17, what other uses can that be used for?
What was its purpose? Maybe explain its history.
Sorry, I
That we're done.
I did. Fund 17 was established for use when revenues are short or to fund one-time expenditures. So at the discretion of the board can use that money for whatever purpose. It's a special reserve for other than capital outlay.
We can use it for paying specialists, teachers, things like that. I believe we've done that in the past.
One time in nature, though.
One time,
because
yeah,
it's
one time.
They're one-time funds.
It's temporary or, yeah, situation.
If we use the pay-as-you, I mean, if we're putting the pay-as-you-go amount in there as part of it, that money is already accounted for in our benefits line item. So, I mean, Fund 17 wouldn't go down by that amount because that amount was already accounted for somewhere else? Is that a way of looking at it?
Currently, we budget our retiree benefits within the general fund. So if the money was transferred from Fund 17 into a irrevocable trust and then used, then that would save money in the general fund. But it would be considered one time as well, because once those one-time funds are used up, then. But one of the ideas is that the interest that is earned on the irrevocable trust will reduce the amount of the general fund dollars that need to go to support that, because the interest that you're earning is going to augment what you would have to contribute on an annual basis.
And what's our, so you said that for 2014, 457, based on our last actuarial study, what's our 2015 number? Do you have that?
I do have
544. And 634 in 2016.
So I guess my thoughts are more along with what Matt was bringing up. My thought would be more the 457, which is the number I brought up last month, which is what we're already paying. And then as far as Julie's talking, you know, we want to actually save some money too, and get that higher interest rate. And I would recommend the 544. So like
457,
450,
544.
457 out of the general and 544 out of Fund 17 or something like that. That'd be my numbers.
What would 1% of salaries be, do you know?
1% of our salaries.
Isn't that 186?
Yeah.
Yeah, that includes statutory, so yes, but roughly.
No.
Just a number.
Quick math.
That's salaries only, not salaries
Yeah.
and benefits.
I believe what Aquilani's is looking at is 1% of their total salaries, which is just salaries only.
And 186 is just our salaries as well?
Statutory is
Hmm?
included. Statutory is included.
Okay. So what would it be, just our salaries?
What's the draw to doing 1% of salaries?
been done.
Well, it's, in all honesty,
Someone else
so
is
we're
doing
just,
it, I don't know.
we're just thinking about, well, if they did 1%, what would that be for us?
I mean, they're not doing, I don't think, I mean, they probably did about one, if you looked at what their initial deposit was, it probably was maybe about 1% of their salaries, I don't know, because I haven't looked at it in that way. I know they were looking at, started like from this point forward, looking at that number maybe, but they went back and, I mean, they've done a couple of deposits in a year, I mean, you know, I mean,
Yeah,
I guess it's just to start.
Well, you say, that's the kind of thing that I think, you know, if you're talking about let's do an in perpetuity kind of like, let's fund every single year, sort of adding, chipping away at your OPEB liability, 1% of salaries or something like that, that makes sense, but I thought this was a little bit different, as we're just trying to start a little.
we don't know the context of that 1% of their budget. Obviously it's tied to their salaries, but we don't know what they have sitting in funds, et cetera. I mean, it shows the annual required contribution of 1.5 million, our ARC.
Right, which is where we should ultimately be heading for, but.
It takes time to get there.
Well, so I'm,
150 would be 1%, 150,000 approximately.
so I mean, my take on this is that, one, the 457 is already budgeted, 457, 710, whatever it ends up being exactly, but it's already budgeted. So moving that to this vehicle, since we just signed up for it, makes perfect sense. And I'd say, given the actuarial, unless there's going to be a major shift, I mean, I agree with targeting the next actuarial year, and where that comes from, I think is open to discussion in terms, because we'd be pulling it from the general fund next year if we didn't have this. So does it all come from the general fund? No, not ideally, because it's a big hit. But I think it needs to get there. So, because it's going to be paid. So you might as well capture 6% on your $500,000 plus or minus that you're marking and you're going to actually pay out.
But
So in
I
nutshell,
don't get,
Texas-
so you're saying that you would just be putting aside the money that we would then be using that money every year just to keep paying?
I'd say
We're not
the
saving
idea of getting ahead by a year so that you're earning more interest every year.
So you're saying double it.
And I'm not saying
Is
that
that-
necessarily follow the actuarial in perpetuity. That's not, I'm saying right now, if the board's unanimous on setting this vehicle up, we know 457 is going to go out. So we should put it in there and get our 20 grand or whatever we end up with, right? So, and then it makes sense to put the 544 in and start earning that interest so that we only had to put really 500 in by the next year.
That sounds good in theory, but it also feels to me like that's sort of a budget process decision, and why are we making it right now, right here? Why can't we just do that in a few months when we're in the budget process? I don't know that there's any advantage. We're talking about 2 months of interest at 6%. I don't know that there's any big advantage. To me, it's not that much money. It's more about what's the right process.
Okay, I guess I hear that in terms of process, but I also know that it's not like we're going to fund any less of what we have to pay during the budget process.
Well, then we have to talk about where would the money come from if we're going over 457. Are we talking about taking out of the general fund or out of the Fund 17?
I would suggest you take 544 out of Fund 17 and 457 out of the general fund.
So that's 544 that you wouldn't be able to use if you wanted to in our next budget process.
No, it's
544
544
that's
that
not in
you're
the general
already,
fund next year.
it's 544
Yeah, but
that
it
you're
would
already
be in the trust fund.
going to benefit. But you're saying
Right.
not saving any, you're saying getting sort of a jump start on
Yeah, with
the
risk-
money that you're
risk-
gonna have to spend next year anyway, rather than putting aside money to help.
You
Because
can free up the general fund for next budget process.
Because when Sarah's talking about in 2 months we're going to start the new budget process, that's going to be the budget process for 15-16.
Following years.
And the 15-16 number is 544. I mean, that's the number.
Okay.
It's actually probably going to be higher than that when the actuarial study comes out, because that's going to be at least 544.
And the idea that I'm hearing, and I don't know if it's what you're saying, but what I'm taking away is, why wouldn't you set your general fund balance through the budget process as available as possible for everything you want to spend general fund monies for? I mean, it goes to the facilities argument too. You want to earmark things that are more restricted, spend the monies that are restricted for those things. This is something we're going to have to pay. So why not free that 544 up in the general fund for next budget, so that you can entertain other discussions with that money?
But then why not, if you're going to do that on an annual basis and say, okay, we're gonna put our pay-as-you-go amount in there, and then, so we earn interest on it while we're paying that money out. I mean, then we're never, I mean, why not have that be really part of your annual budget process? And when are we then, I mean, the whole point of this thing was to create a fund that would be saving money, not just earning some interest. I mean, that's a nice benefit, and I can see why we'd want to put the money that we're gonna be paying out, but I mean, isn't it also to chip away and get ultimately up to that mark amount?
Well, that's
So
what he's saying.
how are we doing that when?
By putting it in advance, you're doing that.
That's what we're talking about, Drew.
So you get like 20-something from this year's roll.
Mhm.
If you put the 544, you may earn another, I don't know, 60.
Mhm.
And so you're
Lowering how
You're
much
lowering,
is coming out of your
and
general fund.
granted, in the general fund budgeting discussion, you're gonna have to figure out where to fund this. I mean, I'm not losing sight of that issue. I mean, it's clear you can't just, Fund 17 isn't gonna keep paying for this. But it gives you a year to think about it and earn interest at the same time, and plan.
But the ARC is paying not only your pay-as-you-go, it's also paying a portion of your liability
Right.
that you have that's unfunded. So if we're just
Until you
putting
hit
aside
that,
our,
right.
right, if we're just putting aside, I mean, yes, you'll be earning some interest, so you'll be gaining.
Yeah, if we
But you know what
wanted,
I'm
if we
saying.
wanted to gain, we would put in 1.5 million, and then we would pay it out, pay the 457 still out of the general fund. That's how we gain.
Right.
And if we could make those numbers
But
work,
then Fund 17 is just done.
yeah, if we could make those numbers work, I think that would be great, but.
Did you have some other suggestion?
No, I need my suggestion.
I can't really remember what it was.
Well, I said to put the 457 and then do the 1% on top of that, and then
The 1% of the salaries.
as
Top
like
of
a
that.
savings towards reaching, you know, so you're using it as your checking account for that,
But not spend it.
and then not
Leave
spend
it-
the one,
leave that in
spend the
there.
457 on your pay-as-you-go, and leave the other piece in and build on that as you go along.
Well, I guess, Julie, the way to match your suggestion, I mean, what I see, that's entirely through the budget process, that very thing can happen, or it could be 2%. I mean, it could be.
Right, right.
If you set up enough in there now to what we're talking about, it's there. When you do the next budget discussion, you're figuring out how much more you want to put in.
You can buy down.
Right? You could leave the 150 just rolling forward for another year based on how much more you put in. So if you're, you know, whether you're talking about that amount going in and just staying put, or it needs to get in there anyway to do that.
Well, I like Julie's suggestion, actually, the 457 plus 150, that's close to what I was saying. And then you could, you know, in the budget process, you could talk about, do we want to do more? But that establishes money in the account with a little more. So that seems to me like it is accomplishing what we're trying to do.
Well, then I see it as an ongoing conversation too, where, you know, in a few months you're kind of taking a look at it and maybe ultimately coming up with the.
I mean, it has to be an ongoing conversation, and that's the point, is to have it be an ongoing conversation, not a conversation 10 years from now when it's a massive problem. I'm hearing consensus on this side of the table to do like a 457 plus a 544. we have a motion on that?
So where is that extra 544 gonna come, which fund is it gonna come out of? Fund 17. And so how much, if we did that, Lorraine, how much would we have left in?
Well, it has 1.3 in it.
Okay, so that would leave like 800,000 in it. So that's
750.
taking out a good chunk out of Fund 17.
So make a motion that we move our general fund monies that are currently earmarked for the benefits of the 457 to our new OPEB with CalPERS for this year, and that for the next year, based on the actuarial, 544 from Fund 17 goes in there as well.
Second? Second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No,
Okay. That vote was 3-2.
I would just like to say for the record, Kathy, that I'm not opposed to putting money in there, obviously, I just don't want to put in that much right now.
Do we have, do I need to tell you the people? I forget the rules again.
Well, I know that
Kathy, you got it.
yes, I can put it.
Just know the rules have changed, and we need to say that, we need to make it clear for the audience. From Holtz, Moran, Severson, Negri. Okay, thank you for that discussion. Next, we have, I guess Kathy's going to lead it, but Adam as well, our single school site plan for student achievement for Wagner Ranch Elementary School.
Yes. Mr. Adam Seville and I are both here tonight to present to you the Wagner Ranch Single School Plan for Student Achievement for Board Approval. Mr. Seville joined our district in late August, and at that time he hit the ground running with a variety of responsibilities that come with managing the site, and one of those was in bringing together his site council for the 2014-15 school year and going through the process to elect those members, and then followed by reviewing the school plan from last year. That was both with the teaching staff as well as the site council. And so the process has taken a couple months. In addition, he worked with the other site principals and with me to get a grasp on the LCAP goals for the district and to make sure that Wagner Ranch's plan was aligned with the LCAP, similar to the other school plans that were approved last month. And so we have the plan before you. It was approved on October 23rd by the Wagner Ranch Site Council, and to be brought forward to you today. And so with that, you will see that there are similarities in the format. It is the same format as the previous plans. We do have the 2013 school data, but we do not have any current data to do the analysis with. However, there has been some analysis done. There is a school site survey, and those results are on page 88 of the board numbers. And then everything has been updated to continue the focus on the Common Core state standards and what can be put in place to help proceed in that direction in preparation for the new state assessments. So the plan has 4 goals, and those goals on the front cover have been set up and established looking at the various other data that we had available. And both Mr. Seville and I are available to answer any questions.
Okay. Questions from the board?
Yeah, I have a few questions, thank you. And I just want to say first, thanks for all the work, Adam, on this site plan and to your staff and the site council. I just noticed in the goals, and from looking at the other site plans last month, that the different goal 1, 2, 3, and the expenditures on the budget page, that's page 109, they differ quite a bit. And I wonder, you know, like for example, on this one, goal 1 on yours, I noticed is language arts, reading and language arts. And then goal 2 is math, and there's just a lot bigger budget for language arts. And I know it's because of what you have in the plan, but I wondered if you tried to balance that at all, or, for example, goal 3 is science, and I know we've got a science program, but it just, I just wondered if you could say something about that.
Yeah, thank you. Originally, actually, we had a 5th goal, and we had separated reading and writing. So part of the reason why language arts, I think, looks larger is we took what were originally 2 goals and made them 1. So there's a lot of work being done in both those areas in reading and writing. And again, I think in the past, looking at last year's site plan, for instance, those were separated out, so there was more balance. But that's why I think you're seeing more in the language arts.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And I know you don't have the school safety goal having any expenditures for it. It must be in here, but I didn't remember seeing it. Is that like already covered? Yeah, you've got it in here, it's just you didn't need any expenditures for it, that's all right.
Right.
Okay. And actually, maybe this question's for Kathy. I don't really understand what the centralized service goal means as opposed to the first 3 goals.
The centralized service goal is in all the plans, and it is that district staff is used to support and implement a lot of the tasks there, and those tasks do come from the LCAP and the curriculum plan. And so they're just generally for all schools, and so they're similar across the board.
Okay, thank you.
They're for information from the school site council.
Okay.
Some of the expenditures also have to do with things that are probably used for math as well, like the smart boards.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is one of our larger expenditures, obviously, with the smart boards, and that is something, while it is in the goal 1, will obviously be used in all goal areas.
Yeah. Yeah, because you don't have a separate technology goal.
Right.
And so, unless 1 or 2 of the schools did do it that way. Okay, thank you.
So I guess one question, again, thank you for integrating so quickly and getting going too at Wagner. Goal 3 in terms of the next generation science standards is, can you walk me through how that integration looks? Because I know that obviously it's, you know, I've heard what's going on from my 7th grader, and I see what's going on, but I'm curious how that looks there at Wagner.
It is a work in process, and you might be able to support me on this too as well. We have a number of our teachers who are very involved in the Bayside training. So what that's looking like this year is they're participating in that training. They're also then bringing some of that work back to communicate to the rest of the staff as we go through this transition. And then we are, looking at the moving into the updated FOSS, which will also reflect the next generation science standards. So it continues to be a work in process, and but we do have several teachers who are involved, who are actively implementing things currently in the classroom to make that transition, and again communicating that with our staff and those instructors are on site.
And that's across, I guess, which are the main grades that are being kind of integrated first, so to speak?
Well, I do want to add that Wagner Ranch was one of our first schools that had teachers participating in Bayside. So the grades where we've had Bayside involvement and integration in the classroom are first, second, third, first, second, and fifth is what we have.
Thank you.
Is that going to continue, or are we trying to expand it to other grades?
When I say that it's in those grades, it's because those teachers are in those grades, but those teachers are actually sharing their practices with their colleagues. So it's not that we're just saying it's only happening in those grades, but that's where those teachers are getting the initial training. And we try to balance the grade levels across the district because they all meet together and work together. And so it's just that at Wagner Ranch that those are the grades that those teachers are in.
So Adam, again, I just wanted to welcome you to the district again, and thank you so much for hitting the ground running, and please extend thanks to your site council for the great job they did on this. I like single school plans because they get us to focus on what we're here for, which is to improve the academic performance of all students. And I think that's our purpose and your purpose, and that's why we're here. I was just wondering if maybe you could share briefly your challenges, what your challenges are right now, and maybe what your successes are, really briefly.
For our school site in general, or for me personally?
Yours. However you want to share.
Obviously, and I think some of my challenges are the school site challenges in the whole, which is obviously, as a new principal, there's, I think our school and our district is in a big time of transition. As we're in our first full year of complete implementation of the Common Core. We're moving into the next generation science standards. There's a lot happening on all fronts. So certainly for our site, then on top of that, obviously there's new leadership, and there's a lot of things going on all fronts, and I think there's a lot of transitions that are happening for all of us there. So that's definitely. And that takes time. I think a lot of what's happening now at our school is relationship building, and that's is certainly for me establishing those relationships with our staff, both certificated and classified, as well as with the parent community, and trying to be clear and honest and transparent in everything that we do. Administratively and communicate that really well to everybody. So, I think that's definitely where there's a lot of time and energy going into that. And we've had, we continuing. There's some staffing holes with our classified staff that we've had that we're continuing to work on. That's been an area that's been challenging, and we're continuing to chip away at that every day.
How about success? What's the
success?
best part? What's the best part?
This was a tremendous undertaking, the site plan, and especially I think to be able to pull together, so many different groups to get something like this in place, and because that's been a process of first looking back at what we've done together as a group, getting that feedback from teachers, getting that feedback from the parent community. And then as a new site council, putting that into action. So certainly I think, going through that process and getting to this point, I think has been very successful. And I think we're taking great strides in building a strong network of communication and trust at the school. So I would say those are areas that have been.
Thank you for great things. Thanks a lot. Lucky to have you. Any questions?
I got one more question. This is really for Kathy. So I'm seeing in here where we're saying the under the goals, that we're going to be doing the I forget how you pronounce it, the CAASPB assessment. Yeah, and from where we sit right now, that sounds great, but I'm kind of wondering, how is that really going to happen, and are we going to get results from the state in math and language arts, and what is that your understanding?
Yes, we are proceeding to have testing this spring, and we are expected to get results soon after the test is completed.
Great, in those two areas.
English, language arts, and mathematics.
Okay, and are we going to continue science STAR tests in 5th grade, or what?
Yes, the latest information we received is that grade 5 and grade 8 will continue with the STAR test. It isn't called the CST STAR test any longer. They changed the name 2 weeks ago. It's the CASP test.
The CASP test?
STAR test, yeah, and we tried to note that in the plan. Yes.
That sounds like the same as the math, and is it the same, how you pronounce it? No.
It's not, it's the same test, it's the old CST test, but it has a new name.
Okay.
The test has not changed yet.
All right, thank you. I'm sure we'll hear more about that later. It's hard to keep up on it all.
Is there any comments from the public on this item?
I just want to say thank you, Adam. It's a lot of work. It's impressive. Appreciate you mentioning working on the relationships at the site. I've heard great things, and just love having you here in the district. Thank you.
Other comments from the public on this item? Further discussion from the board? We have a motion on this item?
I move we approve the 2014-2015 single school plan for student achievement for Wagner Elementary School.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that was unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Okay, Orinda. Agreeing with Northwest Capital Recovery Group for reduction refund of specific utility expenses.
So District Goal 3 fiscal focuses on long-range budget planning and exploring ways to reduce costs through more efficient practices. Northwest Capital Recovery Group offers school districts a program that analyzes utility bills for errors. The firm specializes in recovering overcharges in the areas of electricity, natural gas, water, sewer, garbage, and shredding. They also perform telecommunication audits, but we engaged in a telecommunication audit previously, so we're not interested in that portion of their services. There's no risk or out-of-pocket costs for the district. The NWCRG shares a percentage of any refunds, credits, or actual savings after they've been shown up on the district's bills. So it's purely performance-based. If they don't find any savings, we don't owe them any money. Savings recommendations are voluntary and don't require participation. It doesn't require expense or capital expenditures. The saving recommendations are also not projected savings, they're actual savings. The district would compensate the firm 45% of the savings for a 24-month period, or we could reimburse them a lump sum amount, which is equivalent to 45% of the monthly savings times 24 months and discounted 20%. So you can either pay over a 24-month period or you can pay a lump sum amount. Like I said, we did participate in an audit for our telecommunication services, which recouped savings of almost $6,000 per month on our telecommunications. This firm is CSBA sponsored, and there are 42 districts in the state that have participated in this audit back in 2012. So they are sponsored by CSBA on CSBA's website. So it's recommended that the board authorize the attached contract with the Northwest Capital Recovery Group.
Thank you. Questions?
I mean, do we look at any other companies that do this kind of work?
There aren't too many that do this work. I did see one other company that performs a similar task, and their rates were much higher.
Meaning they took a greater percentage?
Yes.
And do they look back more than just, it says to provide them with 1 month's complete bills for each account, do they look backwards to look at possible things that they could, savings from, oh yeah, for the last 6 months you've been drilled for this and we can get you all that, or are they just looking at?
They will look retroactively to see if they can recoup the savings and work with the vendors as well to see if they can negotiate refunds for past periods. If it is recovered, then that's calculated onto the monthly savings. But if there's E-rate applications that are applied for and received or anything like that, if there's discounts that are automatically received, then that's not part of what this is.
So Julie, it looks like one of the things they get from us, aside from 1 month, is an authorization letter authorizing them to then ask for past months.
Okay. And my dad has actually done some work, I don't know if he's on the East Coast, no connection to this company, but he's done, when I was reading this, I'm like, I know my dad used to do stuff like that, so I was asking him about it, and he said typically, how most companies work is that they'll do like a 1 year instead of the 24 months that they have here, so that's just something that I was wondering, there were other companies that were offering something that require that 2 years of sharing.
Well, our telecommunication, it was a 4-month savings. So there are other programs, but with the utilities that they're looking at and the programs that they're looking at, the one that I saw was a higher flat percentage.
Thank you.
So I've got a similar question. I'm trying to understand if they find something on a bill, they're not asking us to pay for that savings for 2 years of not, it seems like we're basically, if they find something, right, this is moving forward.
Right.
Even though we're paying less of a bill, we're now paying a percentage of the savings to them. Is that how I'm reading it?
Right, 45% of the savings would be recouped by the firm for the,
and that's
the future
moving
2
forward.
years, correct.
So in terms of the going backwards, is it the same?
Not the way I understand the contract. It's moving forward. It's prospective.
Okay, because that's where I was looking at this and how, 'cause these are companies that, or institutions or what have you, that we've been paying for as a district, I'm sure for quite a while in some cases, right? So
Right.
it seems to me if there's some kind of error that's been going on for a long time, this firm doesn't necessarily go backwards. That isn't the charge of this.
When I spoke to the gentleman, they will try to negotiate refunds, but that isn't always a guarantee, so that's why they do it moving forward.
I was gonna say, that seems like it would be a harder negotiation to say, hey, you've been overcharging us, give us our money back. Different negotiation.
But it doesn't
Right.
cost any money out of pocket to us, and it's a savings that we're
Right.
just sharing the savings rather
Right.
than
Yeah.
recouping the 100%.
That's why I was curious, because this seemed all forward,
Right.
but not, if you find something forward, it means it was happening,
Right.
typically, especially in most of these cases. So.
I would have liked it if somebody was here from Northwest Capital, because I'd like to talk to them about specifically how this has worked for other districts. Like, I'd like to talk about scope, like how much savings they've found. I'm curious if they've ever negotiated a 12-month term instead of a 24-month term, like Julie suggested. Those are my thoughts. I'd be curious to how much they find. What do they find out there? And I'd like to know how often do they actually see a credit for past issues as opposed to savings moving forward and we just hit that 24 months.
They state in their literature that they're able to find savings in 98% of their school district clients. And he probably would be willing to come out, but we didn't approach him on that, so.
Did you talk to anyone, any other school districts that use them, or are there any around here locally, or?
They're, in the county, I don't believe there are any in Contra Costa County. There are some in Livermore, Santa Cruz, San Bernardino, Saugus, Winters.
But they're spread out all over the state, they're not like they're all getting it from LA County or something
Right,
like that.
no, it's,
Kind of
and
one
they
niche.
also work in, they do work in Oregon and Washington as well. but they're CSBA sponsors, so those are the only school districts in the state that they've listed.
So there's errors everywhere.
Coming
down the coast.
So a bigger problem.
That's encouraging. I mean, if there was all just one.
It's both encouraging and not, yes.
SoCal
I don't think you're probably gonna get like a huge savings out of it. I imagine, I mean, maybe occasionally they find something like that, I would imagine it's more, you know, marginal stuff, but it could save us some money, and it doesn't cost us anything other than maybe we're paying them for longer than we could if we negotiate with that term.
Do they have to start at any point in the year ever, or is that?
No, they can come in
Whatever.
at whatever time. And like I said, we did save about $6,000 per month on our telecommunications audit.
How much did they get for that?
They got 4 times that amount, so about $25,000.
So they found.
They saved how much?
$6,000 a month,
Where was that?
telecommunications audit.
I don't see anywhere here where they are from. This doesn't, no addresses. It scares me. I don't like to go to fancy companies.
They have an office in Santa Barbara.
P.O. Box in Alaska.
Santa Barbara.
How'd they get the name Northwest?
They're also out in.
Are they hiring?
If somebody looking for a job.
I wanna work in Santa Barbara.
Okay, I'm gonna, is there any comments from the public on this item?
Charles, I know you're present. You know, I was fine reading that they look for utility bill errors. My one concern was how vague it is when they say line item expense reductions. I want to make sure that it doesn't impact us in the classroom, that we don't find ourselves freezing in the winter because they decide that there's a potential reduction of lowering the thermostat. It just, they didn't give any details on what kind of line item reductions they recommend in other districts or with other companies that they do this audit, so. I looked in the contract, didn't see anything.
Other comments from the public? Further discussion from the board? To me, it sounds like a low-risk proposition. I'm surprised and shocked and whatever else that we're able to get reduction in our telephone bill that much. And if these guys exist as a firm and they're able to find savings on other things, or overcharges, I guess. Again, I'm shocked, but that's the way the world works, I guess. I'm in favor of it.
Yeah, if it can save us money, and, I think it's worth doing. It just occurred to me, does this have a, since we were discussing term on the other one, is this for a certain period of time?
They come in and do the audit, so it's forever, the agreement is forever, is for how long it takes them to complete the audit. So there's not like a set amount of time, they have to go through our big utility bills and they have to look at our information, so there isn't a set amount of time. But once the savings is determined then and agreed upon, then the 24-month period would start.
2 years in an audit.
Right, okay. Got it. I think it makes sense.
These would all be general fund monies, right?
Correct.
Is there a motion on the matter?
I'll move that we approve the agreement with Northwest Capital Recovery Group.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Okay. The 2013-14 Parcel Tax Independent Citizens Oversight Committee appointment. Lorraine, are you gonna take the lead on this, or who's gonna? Lorraine? Yes?
Names first.
That's what I was waiting.
Point out, it doesn't really have much information to add to it, but I think the report from the subcommittees looks relevant.
Maybe if you can give us a 30-second opener, and then we'll,
All right, the Parcel Tax Independent Citizen Oversight Committee was established in December 2011, when the bylaws were adopted by the Board of Trustees. The current board was slated to serve a 2-year term. At one of the recent board meetings, the bylaws were adopted to extend the terms to 4 years. And so we had some vacancies of the committee, which were advertised, and applications were received. There was a subcommittee that met, reviewed the applications, and a recommendation has been made for the committee members.
thank you.
Sure.
Tyson and Julie? Julie and Tracy?
Sure.
Since you look like you have the information in front of you, that's
Sure. So we met, well, first of all, the district did what the board had asked in terms of advertising and soliciting interest, resumes, basically letters from those that can vote within Orinda to serve on this committee. And we received 2 interested parties, both of which come with some new and different experience levels in their careers and what they may bring to the committee from the community. So that was very welcome. In addition, we looked at their makeup with the current volunteer load of those out of the 4 that had said they would go ahead and repeat, and selected a recommendation of Shauna, Linda, and Tim, given just all things being equal. Could have taken any of the 4, but it just seemed good given the volunteer workload of those listed. We met, discussed it, talked about all the different ramifications, and would have, I think, not speaking for Julie, but I believe we both agreed that it would have been nice to have more folks. Whether that's time or sign of the times, either way. Getting ahead of it for the next run will be another kind of sidebar, so that we can solicit the folks to swap out a little more advanced notice. So that's our recommendation in terms of the 2, Daniel and Eileen.
And so the next step would be 2 years from now soliciting
for the other
3 more. Is that right?
What do you think is an appropriate amount of time to get ahead of the curve on? 6 months, 3 months?
Well, I mean, thinking about it, they have to meet in December is the idea, right? So my take would be if there's any way to try and put it out there at the end of the school year so that, at least it's out there, and then maybe so that it's not such a fall-time rush when everything else is going on, right? People can actually think on it and it's out there.
Although at the beginning of the school year, you might have new people who might be interested also. I do think trying to do something
Are
early
these
on
2
the
people,
early-
do they happen to be parents of students in the district, or are they not current parents?
I don't think either of them are current,
Oh, I thought
parents.
they both, I don't have the things right in front of me, but I thought they were both. Joe, do you remember?
One of them is parent.
Right.
I know
Oh,
I
one
remember.
didn't attach, one didn't fill out our form.
Eileen has 1 sophomore in her one.
Okay, so
But they know you
she didn't fill out our form, which asks if you have children in the district, so
I was just wondering if
Daniel.
we were drawing from current parents or not.
So we have
It
a
seemed
mix, so
more their
we were,
community response more
right.
than anything, at least the way they both.
And so we do have a mix on the committee because, Shauna, Simmons, and Tim aren't both, do have students in the district, and people I know.
I think we want to.
So it was,
That's
that was one of the things we were looking at, is just trying to make sure we were getting sort of a mix of community members.
in terms of the timeline, I guess clarify too, I wouldn't say people need to decide end of school year, but getting it out
What
there.
I'm
so
saying,
that
if you're
people are-
advertising in September, maybe you'd get some people who just moved here who would say, oh, I'd love to get involved in that way.
Mhm.
I don't know. And that might still give you, probably doesn't give
Enough
you
time.
enough
Or
time.
you could even do a two-phase, sort of announce it at the end of the school year, but then have a formal
Yeah,
Announce it
paper,
again.
sort of all that kind of thing.
but this sets us up for a year and a half at least.
Yeah, that's a ways out to figure that one out, but.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for your work on that. Is there any comments from the public on this item? No? Okay. Further discussion from the board members that want?
I just would like to say one thing. I remember that there were four, I guess you said that, 4 people that were interested in continuing and then you chose 3. I think it's kind of too bad not to be able to let all 4 of them continue, but I realized if you did that and you had 2 new people, then you'd have 6, and you don't want to even number. So that's kind of too bad, but it's the way it fell out, I guess.
And I think, the sense was that all 4 were willing to continue, but, would be fine, any of them would have been fine with rotating off as well, so it wasn't.
Okay. It wasn't like they were dying to do it.
Right, so I
Yeah.
think it would be
Okay.
fine in that sense.
Okay, well, that's good to know. Yeah.
Well, getting 2 applicants makes me, not that I did not feel good about it, but feel good about keeping our number at 5. I think having a big number of little would have been better to fill.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
I move that we approve the 2013-2014 LUSD Parcel Tax Independent Citizens Oversight Committee appointment.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that was unanimous. Okay, Ed. Notice of award to Robertson Industries Inc. for Glorietta School Playground Project.
Okay, we had the notice to bidders advertised for the Glorietta Playground Project. Went out. We had a total of 5 people bid on this project. And we had a bid walk on October 9th. Showed all the bidders the project. And this part of the project is just the demolition of the existing playground, the curb, and getting rid of the sand. It's also bringing the, recompacting everything and put fill in to bring it up for the new playground structure. And then the playground company will do that part, and then this company will come back in and pour in the poured-in-place surface once the new playground is set at the proper elevations. So on October 21st, we had a public bid at 2 p.m. We had 2 bids. One was $107,357, and the other one was $98,192.50 from Robertson Industries. And the recommendation is the board approve the notice of award for Robertson Industries.
Okay, thanks, Ed.
So why don't you think we got 5 bids?
Probably because of the short time it is. And so the only 2 that bid it for people who have done a lot of playgrounds before. And Robertson Industries, which is also Top Turf, they work hand in hand with Ross Equipment, and that's who's in, that's who the equipment is. That's who the manufacturer of the equipment is, and who's putting in the equipment.
So I noticed the Robertson Industries Top Turf, they show a corporate address in Tempe, Arizona, but the president lists his telephone number as a 510 number. Does he live here? And does he live in the area, or are these people gonna come out from Arizona?
He does live in the area.
Yes. Guys like this, do they then go grab a demolition sub to jackhammer, and do you think it's all his own, do you think he has his own crew here? Okay.
That's what Robertson Industries is, and Top Turf. They're actually the installers and prep people for Ross Equipment. And they did the last, they did the last playground for us at Glorietta.
The lower playground?
Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Oh, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. Did all the bidders walk?
Yes.
They all walked?
All five.
Just
No,
two
we got
decided
bids
to
out.
kick numbers up? That was my only question.
So my question is, being familiar with that playground and knowing that this is to demo the sand, the curb, et cetera, and this is a little bit, not related to just demoing it, but rather than having them haul all the sand away, did the topic of having a sand lot elsewhere in that playground come up during the discussion, do you know, of redoing this playground?
No, they're not hauling the sand away, we're gonna keep it on our sites. We're gonna stockpile it.
Oh, you are? We're over here.
Partially at OIS and partially we're gonna put it on a couple of fields, the Glorietta field, for example, all the holes in it. We're gonna dump a lot of sand there and spread it out, and the same with the lower field at OIS once the soccer team gets on.
Yeah, well, that's good, you're planning to use the sand. But my thought was more for the kids, you know, right now they have sand to play in, and I understand that that's not appropriate for, under the play structure for the best, you know, fall zone, fall surface and all that. But that means that there isn't any, you know, you're gonna have a hard surface there, or whatever that poured in place surfacing, right? So my question was, did the subject of having some sort of sand lot come up when they did the redesign that you're aware of?
No, they still have sand in the swing set area down below in the lower playground. That's
Right,
all
but
sand.
that's, yeah, I'm aware of that. That's
And
pretty
also
older.
there's a sand lot in the kindergarten wing.
Right, so the kindergarten area is for the kindergartners only during recess or whatever, and the lower playgrounds for the older kids, so there wouldn't be any sand or whatever for the first through third graders. That was my point. I would have preferred to see some sort of sand lot in a corner off the edge of the turf or wherever. I don't know if that's something that could still happen, but I just want to mention it because I think it's too bad to take away the sand and have no other place, because just because they're in first grade and kindergarten doesn't mean that it isn't good for kids to be able to play in sand. So I know there's a couple teachers back there and a parent from Glorietta. I don't know if there's any chance of still discussing that, but I wanted to bring it up. So that's it, thanks.
Any questions from the board?
Any comments from the public on this item? Okay, further discussion on this?
So, Ed, I assume that, I know that there's, that the Glorietta Parents Club's involved in paying for the actual structure. Are we paying for all this, the district paying for all this?
Yes.
Great, thanks for clarifying.
And then you coordinate between the two?
Yes. We'll manage
Okay,
it.
and when is the whole project supposed to be finished?
By mid-December, hopefully.
After the holidays or, yeah.
Depends on the rain.
Yeah, yeah, right. Thanks for coordinating that. I'm sure that's not easy when you've got multiple different groups to deal with.
It's too bad they're not located out of Seattle instead of Arizona, because they might actually work in the rain.
Is there a motion on this item?
I move that we approve action item E, notice of award to Robinson Hughes Street Inc. for Glorietta School Playground Project.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Our final action item for the evening, 2014-15 district goals. Dr. Knapp.
Thank you. The district goals were discussed at the last meeting. We reviewed them and took the board's input. There was one item that we suggested a change on based on the input last time, and that's described under the fiscal part to review programs and services for effectiveness and efficiencies with a June target date. That was relative to the financial planning goal. Other than that, we brought the district goals forward for approval.
Follow-up questions from the board? Is there any comments from the public on this item? Any further discussion from the board? I guess I'll lead and say, thanks for being, I know that being quite decided on the language there in 3C, so thanks for getting something down there that I think expressed our discussion. Any other discussion from the board or motion?
I think there's a fair amount of work underway and in front of us.
I move that we approve action item F, 2014-15 district goals.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Miranda's absent. Let's have a 5-minute break, and we will come back for some discussion items. So about 3 till.